Welcome back, friends, to Disney Coffee and Book Talk. I'm your host, Alex. We are in chapter 15 of Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. My goal for these videos of annotating is to show that you cannot separate the art from the artist, that annotation is good, whether it's fiction or non-fiction. There's always something to learn, especially if you're an author. We should never be banning books. Let's get that straight. There are plenty of problematic authors, and we can discuss that. We can discuss why their personal beliefs, their bigotry bleeds into the work, which is the point of this. You cannot separate the art from the artist. I've talked about this back in several different chapters, but especially last week, how when we continue to give money to artists like J.K. Rowling, even by watching the new show, by buying new merchandise, etc., that you're putting money in her pocket, which then goes, she specifically then goes to donate to organizations that are against trans communities. She has spread a lot of harm. That is what it is. We can continue to talk about it. I don't want to trigger anyone, but in that doesn't mean that there haven't been some good points, and I say good as in they don't outweigh the bad. Let's just make that clear. In her writing, and we can always learn when we are talking about being better authors. Okay, that being said, we are going to start off with chapter 15. Chapter 14 ended with Hermione. Let me make a correction. Hermione and Harry were the ones that helped Norbert get to Charlie Weasley, not Ron. I did say Ron in the last video. I apologize. They had the invisibility cloak and they were able to get to the top of the tower, and then Charlie Weasley's friends were able to take Norbert and go back to Romania. Okay. No, so Harry and Hermione were caught by Filch, but so was Neville. Okay, so the three of them were caught by Filch. If you've read the books, especially in I believe it was book 6, which we'll eventually get to, there's been a prophecy the prophecy of the chosen child, which everyone assumed was Harry, but it could have easily been Neville. They were very close in birthdays, I think just hours apart, and Neville's parents were also cursed. Now, they didn't die, but they were in a coma, I believe, whereas Harry's died. So they have similar stories. So let's keep that in mind. Okay, I will say that J.K. Rowling did a great job showing and not telling emotion, especially when it came to the shame that they experienced and that they expressed when they were caught, because they took away, it was like 150 points each, I think it was, and Gryffindor was now very far behind in the House Cup challenge. Okay, we're also going to cover that Harry was flying over the forest for a minute, and he overheard Quirrell being threatened. He assumed, because of his biases, that it was Snape, but it was actually Voldemort. I also want to mention, at one point, Snape mentioned werewolves in the forest. Now, this will come into play in book 3, The Prisoners of Azkaban, when we meet Remus Lupin. Professor Remus is a werewolf, and we're going to see more of that, but this is foreshadowing, right? JK is setting up for future books and future characters. It also goes back to Harry's dad, James, because Remus, Sirius Black, who again we're going to see in book 3, and Wormtail, who ends up being Scabbers, which again we discover in book 3, were all of James Potter's friends. And these are the people that Snape was jealous of. Okay. When on detention, and they're looking for the unicorn, they come across Ronan, and Bane, and Frazee. These are 3 centaurs. We have to make it clear that the way that the wizarding world sees different people, like we've talked a little bit about this with the Malfoys, right? It's racism, it's also classism, right? So they see half-bloods, right? Those that are mixed, biracial, as less than. They see people that are not of the same race as less than. They see anyone that is not them, right? That is racism. And this is what they did to the centaurs. They always said that because they're not of the same race, they're not the same species, that they're less than. And so they segregated, right? They separated themselves. The centaurs stay over here. The wizards are elsewhere. So anyway, I think it was Ronan who said this. Anyway, he said, Mars is bright tonight, which is actually a mystical warning of war. Now, I want to make that clear because this comes into play throughout the book that Voldemort and his people are back. There's going to be another war. This is setting up. It's also setting up with the centaurs because they're going to come back in the future in the series. Harry sees a cloaked, slithering figure. So first of all, the way that is mentioned is Nagini. Nagini is the snake that he freed at the very beginning of this book, if you guys don't remember. But the way that it was expressed was Nagini. Now, Nagini ends up being one of the Horcruxes to Voldemort. We'll find that later, but it was just the description that was put in. So very, not only poetic, but very foreshadowing, backshadowing, all of this stuff. Like very, very, like, I don't want to say Easter egg, because Easter egg would refer to something else, but bless you. There's good points in this, right? She's very specific with her writing. Okay, then we have Harry has pain in his head. So this is when this is the start of when the scar on his head, the lightning bolt, starts to be in pain. This is important because Harry is a Horcrux, which we again find out in the future, and it's his connection to Voldemort. So it's mentioned by Frenzy, who also rescued Harry, that unicorn saves someone from a moment of death. And like, really nobody does that unless they're really, really about to die. And there's some other way to save them. It's like a temporary to get them to the next point. And Frenzy's basically hinting that who would do that? Oh, it's Voldemort, right? And that Frenzy's also hinting that he's seeking the Sorcerer's Stone. I also want to mention that Frenzy and the other... Frenzy goes against kind of the other centaur's wishes, Ronan and Bane, because Frenzy not just rescued Harry, he allowed Harry to ride his back. And Ronan and Bane feel like that's very dehumanizing, but Frenzy is his own person. He said, you know, hey, listen, this is this is important, this is a cause, I have sovereignty, we are going to do this. And so it does cause a little bit of a rift already. So keep that in mind, that there's also those things of the dehumanization. You can kind of think of the centaurs as indigenous people, right? That's how I would see it if we were talking about a non-wizarding world, that they are the people of nature. They are the ones that have been around the longest, and they've been forced into this small area. They're not seen as equal to the outside world. You know, of course, they're going to have their allies, but even then, there's going to be people that don't always agree. They're not a monolith. Like we were just saying, that Frenzy sees things as one thing, and Ronan and Bane see it as another, right? So all of these things come into play, and again, that is big. Like, she describes bigotry, right? There's different forms of it. You know, when we talk about bigotry, you think of it as this umbrella. You know, you have racism, you have xenophobia, you have anti-indigenous, you have anti-black, you have anti-Asian, anti-Pacific Islander, anti-Semitism, transphobia, homophobia, fatphobia, Islamophobia, etc. Like there's all these different spokes of the umbrella, right? And although she doesn't cover every single spoke in these books, she definitely covers a good amount. So we have to keep that in mind. All right, that is all I have for chapter 15. I will see you next Sunday for chapter 16, and then we will be closing this out. So next week is November, and we'll be closing this out on the 9th. Will be the last day that we cover Harry Potter, and then we're going to take the rest of November for other annotation books. They'll be longer videos because I'm going to cover the whole book. Not to say that you can't dive into each and every chapter. You absolutely can. I want to just take a break for a moment. All right, I'll see you guys next week for chapter 16, and I hope you have a good rest of the week.